Every single day, a stray dog walked up to the same sewer grate, holding food gently in its mouth. And every single day, it dropped that food into the darkness below. People thought it was strange. Some even laughed. But when one man decided to follow the dog and see what was really going on, what he found made grown adults cry. This is a story about love that doesn't ask for anything in return, loyalty that goes deeper than words, and about a secret hidden right beneath our feet. Until one quiet day, someone finally paid attention. What they found shocked the entire neighborhood, and it all started with a single act of kindness from a dog no one thought mattered. At the corner of 5th and Ashwood, wedged between the old brick bakery that always smelled like warm cinnamon and the faded green bench at the bus stop that hadn't seen fresh paint in a decade, there lived a dog most people barely even noticed. He wasn't loud. He wasn't wild. He didn't knock over trash cans or chase squirrels or bark at passing kids. He just existed, like a soft whisper in the background of a city that had long since learned to tune out anything that didn't scream for attention. People called him Rusty, not because anyone knew his real name, but because of his fur. It was this deep, patchy, reddish-brown like worn iron, and when the sunlight hit it just right, you could almost mistake him for something more regal. Almost, but not quite, because up close, Rusty looked tired. Not the kind of tired that comes from a long nap, the kind that settles into your bones when you've spent too many nights sleeping in the cold, too many mornings dodging feet on sidewalks, too many days trying not to be seen. Rusty limped when he walked. His back leg dragged ever so slightly, just enough to make you wince if you happened to notice. Some said he'd been hit by a car. Others said he was born that way. But no one really knew, because no one really cared to ask. He wasn't anyone's dog. He belonged to the street. And yet, despite all that, despite being just another shadow in the city's endless rush, Rusty had a routine, a purpose. Every morning, without fail, he would make his way to the back of the bakery. It wasn't much, just a small, family-run place run by the elderly Mr. and Mrs. Devlin, who'd lived in the neighborhood for over 30 years. They were the kind of people who still waved at strangers and remembered kids' names even after they grew up and moved away. It had started simply. One day, they noticed Rusty sitting by the dumpster, not digging, not begging, just sitting, quietly, like he was waiting for something. So, Mrs. Devlin tore off the end of a loaf that had gone a little stale and tossed it toward him. He didn't rush for it. He walked, slow, careful, picked it up in his mouth, and turned around. That's it. No wag of the tail, no bark of gratitude, just silence. The next day, he was there again. Same spot, same time. So they left out more scraps, sometimes meat, sometimes bread, and again, he took it and walked away. But here's where things got strange. Rusty never ate the food. Not then, not later. People started noticing. One by one, those with the time or curiosity began to observe him. He'd walk a few blocks from the bakery, past the florist shop with the broken window, across the street with the flashing pedestrian light that never quite worked, and stop at a storm drain on the far side of the sidewalk. It wasn't anything special, just an old sewer grate, the kind you'd walk by 1,000 times and never think twice about. But Rusty didn't just stop there. He did something that made people blink twice and look again. He dropped the food, right through the bars, every time, carefully, deliberately, and then he'd sit, not for long, maybe 5-10 minutes, sometimes longer, but always with his eyes fixed downward, watching, waiting, almost like he was expecting something. Then he'd get up and leave. No fanfare, no explanation. At first, people thought it was a fluke. Maybe he'd lost it, maybe he was sick, or worse, maybe he was just dumb. That dog thinks he's feeding the sewer. One man chuckled to his son, who giggled and tossed a half-eaten hot dog through the bars. Nothing happened. Another woman snapped a picture for Instagram with the caption, "Sewer dog at it again." Rusty didn't react. He never did. But not everyone laughed. Across the street from the bakery was a small veterinary clinic, barely noticeable if you weren't looking for it. And inside, a young vet assistant named Maya watched Rusty every day from behind a reception desk as she logged patient files and refilled forms. She'd grown up with dogs. Her parents had run a rescue when she was younger, and she remembered the long nights bottle-feeding abandoned litters and the way her dad used to say, "Animals don't lie. They just live the truth." Something about Rusty unsettled her, not in a scary way, in a something's not right kind of way. He didn't act like the other strays. There was no desperation in him, no hunger, just intention. Maya started to notice the small things, how he waited until the bakery workers had gone inside before approaching, how he never looked around while he walked, just stared ahead like he had somewhere important to be. How he never sniffed the food or hesitated before dropping it into the grate. It wasn't random, it was ritual, and that made her nervous. She tried mentioning it to her co-workers during lunch one day, but they brushed it off. Just another weird city dog, Ben, the lead tech, said between bites of his sandwich. Probably storing it for later, added Tasha, the receptionist. But Maya couldn't let it go. So one morning, she followed him. She kept her distance, trailing behind like a ghost. She watched him collect his food from the bakery, saw him limp across the street, and when he reached the sewer grate, she ducked behind a parked car. He dropped the bread and waited. Maya held her breath. She expected nothing, but then, from deep beneath the metal grate, she heard it. A sound, soft, barely there, a high-pitched whine. Her stomach dropped. She waited until Rusty walked away, then hurried to the grate. The smell hit her first, whetstone mildew, a faint mustiness that reminded her of basements and old rain. She peered in, but it was too dark. She could see nothing. Still, the sound haunted her. The next day, she brought a flashlight. When Rusty left, she knelt by the grate, shone the beam into the darkness, and scanned the area. At first, there was nothing, just shadows, then movement, a flicker, a twitch, two glowing eyes reflecting her light, like marbles. She gasped. A puppy, tiny, shaking, huddled in a corner, just beyond reach. No, not just one. Another pair of eyes appeared beside it, then another. Three tiny puppies, trapped, alive. Maya's breath caught in her throat. She wasn't imagining it. The sewer hadn't swallowed the food. The stray dog wasn't just acting out some bizarre instinct. He was feeding them. 3 trembling, dirty little puppies, no bigger than loaves of bread, cowering in the damp belly of the city. One of them tried to move, dragging itself forward on unsteady paws. Its leg wobbled at a strange angle. The other 2 stayed close behind, huddled together, eyes wide and fixed on the light, like they were seeing a star for the first time. Maya's heart pounded. She pulled back instinctively, the flashlight trembling in her hand. Her mind raced with questions. How long had they been down there? How did they get in? Why hadn't anyone heard them? But most of all, how did Rusty find them? She stood up and backed away, her knees wobbling. This wasn't something she could just shrug off. These weren't alley cats you could toss a can of tuna to and hope for the best. These were babies, trapped in a place they weren't meant to survive in. Rusty had been their lifeline. She rushed back to the clinic. "I need to talk to Dr. Ellis," she blurted, still breathless. Ben looked up from his clipboard. "She's in surgery. It's an emergency. I found puppies in the sewer." That made him pause. "Wait, what?" Maya grabbed a clipboard, yanked out a sheet of paper, and started scribbling everything she'd seen. The time, the location, the number of puppies, even a rough diagram of the grate. Ben slowly stood. "You're serious?" "Completely. And Rusty, the stray, he's the one who's been feeding them." By the time Dr. Ellis emerged, wiping her hands on a towel, Maya had already pulled a rescue kit together. Rope, treats, gloves, a soft carrier. She was going back, with or without help. To her relief, Dr. Ellis didn't hesitate. "Let's go." They arrived at the sewer just as the sun began to rise higher in the sky, casting golden streaks across the sidewalk. Rusty was gone, his morning mission apparently complete, but the grate remained, silent and still. Dr. Ellis crouched down, flashlight in hand. A moment of silence. Then she whispered, "Oh my God." Maya swallowed hard. "They're down there. 3 of them." Ellis nodded. "We can't get them through the grate. We need to access the sewer from a manhole." "There's one near the alley behind the florist shop," Maya said quickly. "I checked yesterday." Without another word, they jogged across the street. The manhole cover was heavy, rusted from years of disuse, but with Ben's help, they'd called him along the way. They managed to pry it open. The air that greeted them was heavy and sour. Not quite disgusting, but enough to make you want to hold your breath. "I'm going in," Maya said, tying the rope around her waist. Dr. Ellis hesitated. "It's dangerous down there. Slippery, unstable. I'll be careful. They're babies." The rope lowered her down slowly, inch by inch, until her feet touched the wet stone floor. It was darker than she expected. The flashlight only lit a small circle ahead of her. The echoes of her breath bounced off the concrete walls like whispers. She moved slowly, turning corners, checking every small crevice and shadow until, a soft whimper, she turned. There they were, tucked into a shallow drain outlet, trembling and squinting at the light. Maya froze. They looked worse up close. One was severely underweight, its ribs sharp and visible beneath matted fur. Another had a large scab across its back leg, the kind that hinted at infection. The third, the smallest, had gunk stuck to its eyes and nose, its head bobbing with fatigue. Her heart shattered, but even as she approached slowly, gently, hand extended with a whisper soft, "Hey babies," the smallest one let out a growl. It was the tiniest, saddest growl she had ever heard. She knelt, lowering the food. They didn't move toward her, because they were waiting for someone else. Rusty. They were used to him. Meanwhile, back on the street, Rusty was approaching again. Mrs. Devlin had stepped outside the bakery and offered a small wrapped piece of meat, today's contribution to the silent ritual. Rusty took it without hesitation and turned toward the sewer. But something was different. He paused, sniffed the air. His ears perked, and then he bolted, not away, toward the manhole. Ben, still holding the rope, yelped in surprise as the dog charged straight past him and began barking at the opening. Loud, frantic, protective. Maya heard it echo below. She turned, shining the flashlight toward the opening of the sewer. Rusty was there, pacing above her, barking, calling to the puppies. And that was when it happened. The tiniest of the pups, the one with the weakest eyes, perked up, then the second, then the third. They wobbled forward, toward the beam of Maya's flashlight, toward the echo of the barking above, toward hope. She didn't hesitate. One by one, she scooped them up, wrapping them gently in the soft towel she'd brought, whispering reassurances as they whimpered. When she emerged, lifted by Ben and Dr. Ellis, the world above seemed to hold its breath. Rusty sat there, silent now, watching, and when Maya gently placed the towel down and opened the fold, revealing 3 sets of blinking, frightened eyes, Rusty whimpered. He licked their faces, each one, as if counting them, as if checking, as if saying, "You made it." The crowd had started to gather by then, people on their morning walks, joggers who paused with earbuds still in, bakery customers holding warm coffee cups. Everyone watched in quiet awe as Maya cradled the puppies, and Rusty sat beside her like a silent guardian. Dr. Ellis knelt beside them, inspecting the tiny bodies one by one. "They're severely malnourished," she murmured. They wouldn't have lasted another few days. One of the older men from the neighborhood, a retired schoolteacher named Mr. Hollis, stepped forward, tugging off his cap. "That dog's been feeding them for weeks," he said, voice shaking. "All this time, we thought he was just some odd stray." But he knew. Rusty didn't react. He kept his eyes on the puppies, his tail occasionally brushing the sidewalk. Ben crouched beside him and whispered, "You're a hero, buddy, a real one." It was then that Maya noticed something she hadn't before. Rusty's eyes, those tired, kind eyes, were also glassy with something more than age. He blinked slower than usual, and when he tried to stand, his limp was worse than she remembered. "He's not okay," she whispered. "He's injured, maybe more than just the leg." Dr. Ellis noticed it too. "Let's get him and the pups back to the clinic." Now, Maya carefully stood, holding the bundled towel to her chest. Ben gently slipped a leash around Rusty's neck. He didn't resist, and they all walked together across the street, as if in a solemn little parade. The bakery workers stepped out and watched them go. A teenager pulled out his phone and started filming. Someone else murmured, "Someone should tell the news." But for Maya, the world had narrowed down to the 4 lives in her care. 3 tiny ones tucked in a towel, and the broken soul walking quietly at her side. Back at the clinic, the pups were cleaned, warmed, and placed under heat lamps. Fluids were administered. Tests were run. One of them had a respiratory infection. Another had fleas so bad they caused anemia. But they were fighters. And Rusty, he lay quietly in a corner, watching everything. Even with his own body hurting, he wouldn't take his eyes off them. Dr. Ellis came back with x-rays. "He's got a fractured femur, likely old. He's been walking on it for weeks, maybe months." Maya's chest tightened. "That means, while he was feeding them, he was injured the whole time." Ellis nodded. "He never stopped." The room fell quiet again. It wasn't just that Rusty had fed them. He'd found them, protected them, cared for them. And now that he knew they were safe, he was finally letting himself rest. That night, Maya couldn't sleep. She sat on her couch, watching the video she'd taken earlier. Rusty at the grate, the food drop, the silent wait. The comments were already flooding in. "This broke my heart. What kind of soul does a dog have to do that? That dog is an angel. I'm literally crying. Please adopt him. The world doesn't deserve dogs like Rusty." The story had spread. Someone had posted it on a local news page, then a regional one. By midnight, people from across the country were messaging the vet clinic. Some wanted to donate, some wanted to adopt the puppies, and more than a few wanted Rusty. But Maya wasn't ready for that yet. The next day, The clinic was flooded with reporters, microphones, cameras, questions. Maya answered as best she could. She told the story, not just about the rescue, but about Rusty, how he'd shown up months ago, how people had ignored him, how the entire time he was quietly, patiently, saving lives. Rusty sat calmly through it all, the way he always did, head held high, quiet, strong. But there was something else happening too. The puppies, now named Ash, Willow, and Birch by the clinic staff, were beginning to improve. Slowly, they started eating on their own, wagging their tails, yipping when Maya walked by, and every time they made noise, Rusty's ears would perk up. He'd lift his head. He knew they were still there, still safe, still his. But the story wasn't over, because 3 days after the rescue, something unexpected happened. Rusty refused to eat. Not the good stuff. Not the grilled chicken Mrs. Devlin brought from the bakery. Not even the special soft food from Dr. Ellis. He just lay there. Maya sat with him for hours, gently stroking his fur. "You don't have to keep fighting, boy," she whispered. "You did it. They're safe." And then, in the soft glow of the heat lamp, as the puppies slept peacefully just a few feet away, Rusty looked at her, and something passed between them. A quiet understanding. A thank you. A goodbye. "No," Maya said, tears brimming in her eyes. "You're not going anywhere. Not yet." They ran more tests. Rusty's heart was weak. His organs showed signs of long-term malnourishment. His leg, never properly healed, was causing systemic stress. Dr. Ellis was honest. He might not have much time left, but Maya wasn't going to let him go without knowing something first. Who had he been before all this? Was he just another stray, or had he once belonged to someone? She scanned him again, and there, faint, almost invisible, was the tiniest scar around his neck, a collar scar. Rusty hadn't always been alone. A few days later, after posting to lost pet registries, Maya got a hit. It came from a woman 2 towns over. Her dog, Ranger, had disappeared a year ago during a flood. She had looked everywhere, filed reports, posted signs, but after months without a word, she gave up. When Maya sent the photo of Rusty, the woman wept. "I thought he was dead." And that's when everything changed again, because Rusty hadn't just saved 3 puppies. He'd saved himself, too. Maya couldn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw them. Those tiny, scared eyes glowing faintly in the flashlight's beam, deep beneath the grate. Trapped, alone, waiting. And Rusty, how many days, how many weeks had he been doing this? Feeding them? Keeping them alive? That wasn't just instinct. That was care. That was sacrifice. The next morning, Maya was at the clinic before anyone else. She paced the hallway, coffee in one hand, phone in the other, scrolling through search results. Animal rescue from storm drain. How to help animals in sewer. Safe way to access drainage systems. She had no idea how long those puppies had been down there, or how many, or if they'd even survive another day. But one thing was clear. She had to get them out. Ben showed up an hour later and immediately noticed Maya's restless energy. "You didn't sleep, did you?" he asked, setting his bag down. "Nope," Maya replied without looking up. "I'm going back there. We need to figure out how to get those pups out. I think Rusty's been feeding them for weeks." Ben blinked. "You think he's their caretaker?" "I don't think. I know. You saw how he dropped that food. So gently, like he's afraid it'll land wrong. He's not just tossing scraps down a hole. He's delivering meals." Ben looked skeptical but didn't argue. Not after what they saw the day before. "Okay," he said. "Let's go back." In daylight this time, they crossed the street and stood at the sewer grate. Rusty wasn't there yet, but the same quiet stillness hovered in the air, like the sidewalk itself knew a secret. Maya knelt and pressed her ear to the bars. Silence. Then, just barely, the softest scratch, like little paws against concrete. "They're still in there," she whispered. "We need help." But help wasn't easy to find. They called animal control, left a voicemail. They called the city's maintenance department, left on hold. They even called the local fire station, and while the officer on the line was kind, he said they couldn't divert resources unless it was a human life at risk. So Maya posted on social media. She shared a short video of Rusty dropping food into the sewer, added a photo of the puppy eyes they saw, and wrote, "There are puppies trapped in a storm drain near 5th and Ashwood. A stray dog has been feeding them for weeks. We need help. Anyone with rescue experience or equipment, please reach out." She didn't expect much, but within an hour, her phone blew up. Dozens of shares, comments, messages. "I've got a camera snake I use for plumbing. Want me to bring it? My cousin's with the rescue group Paw Project. Sending this to her now. I live down the block. I'll bring flashlights and gloves." By noon, there was a crowd gathered around the grate, and in the middle of them all, sitting like a quiet little guardian, was Rusty. No barking, no wagging, just watching. Maya knelt beside him and gently touched his head. "We're going to help them, I promise." A man named Eric, who introduced himself as a retired plumber, brought a long inspection camera and carefully fed it through the grate. The screen showed the narrow passage twisting into darkness, lined with damp concrete and patches of standing water. And then movement, a tail, a tiny, wagging tail, then another, and another, for puppies, all huddled together in a corner of the drain, formatted, eyes wide, bones visible beneath their skin. But they were alive. "They're in the junction pipe," Eric said. "Probably found their way in during the last storm and couldn't figure out how to get back out. Can we reach them?" Maya asked. Eric scratched his head. "Not from the top, but we might be able to open the maintenance hatch 2 blocks down and crawl through." "Let's do it," Maya said without hesitation. The crowd agreed. A group of volunteers formed instantly. Some offered tools, others brought blankets, towels, even pet carriers. It wasn't just a rescue anymore. It was a mission. They followed Eric 2 blocks down to a street that sloped slightly lower. There, half hidden under a pile of fallen leaves, was a rusted metal cover. It took 3 people and a crowbar to pry it open. The air that came out was damp and stale. Ben volunteered to go in first. He was the slimmest and wasn't claustrophobic, which he admitted like it was a badge of honor. He strapped on a headlamp, took a walkie-talkie, and lowered himself into the dark. The crawl space was tight, wet. The smell of mildew and old water was thick in the air, but he pushed forward. 10 minutes passed, then a crackle on the radio. "I see them, all 4. They're scared, but they're okay. I'm gonna need help getting them out. Might take a while." Back at the street, Maya sat beside Rusty, her hand resting on his fur. "You kept them alive," she whispered. "All this time. You didn't even eat the food yourself. You gave it to them." Rusty leaned into her touch for the first time. Hours passed, one by one. The puppies were carefully passed through the tunnel, wrapped in towels, and lifted into the daylight. Each one was tiny, frail, but they were fighters, just like Rusty. When the last pup was out, the crowd cheered. Rusty stood and slowly approached them. The smallest puppy, white with a patch of brown over one eye, let out a little bark. Rusty's ears perked. The puppy stumbled forward, tail wagging, and then, something that no one expected, Rusty bent down and licked the puppy's face, gently, slowly, like a parent checking in on their child. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "Oh my God," someone said. "He's their dad." It didn't seem possible, but there was no denying the connection. Each pup, in turn, hobbled over to Rusty, and he nuzzled them, groomed them, whined softly. They piled on him, tiny paws clinging to his fur. It was the reunion they'd all been waiting for. Maya wiped her eyes. "You weren't just helping them, you were protecting them." That night, the clinic stayed open late. Each puppy was examined, bathed, and given warm food. They were underweight, yes, but otherwise healthy, strong little things. Rusty never left their side. He didn't even flinch when they cleaned his wounds, when they trimmed the matted fur around his leg, when they poked and prodded him. He just watched his pups, always watching. Word spread fast. News outlets showed up. Reporters wanted interviews. The video of the rescue went viral. Headlines popped up. "Hero stray dog feeds puppies through sewer grate for weeks. Father of the year has 4 legs and a heart of gold. Rusty the rescue dog melts the internet's heart." But for Maya, none of that mattered. What mattered was this. Rusty wasn't just a stray anymore. He was a father, a protector, a miracle on 4 legs. And now, he and his pups had a chance at something they never had before, home. It was the kind of quiet only found after a storm, calm, heavy with reflection. Inside the clinic's recovery room, Rusty lay curled up on a blanket, his body wrapped protectively around his 4 pups. Their bellies were full, their tiny bodies warm, and for the first time in their lives, they were safe. But just as the air settled, a sound broke through the silence. The front doorbell. Maya, still groggy from a nap on the clinic couch, stood up and peeked through the front window. A man and a woman stood outside, holding hands. The woman looked like she'd been crying. The man clutched something small in his hand, a faded photo. Maya opened the door slowly. "Can I help you?" she asked. The woman stepped forward. "We saw the news report, the video. The dog, Rusty. I think he might be the dog we lost 2 years ago." Maya blinked. The woman pulled out a crumpled flyer from her purse. It was old, water-stained, but the photo on it was unmistakable. A younger Rusty, leaner, cleaner. But those eyes were the same. "We called him Scout," the man said softly. "We rescued him from a shelter in Texas. He ran away during a road trip up here. We searched for weeks. We thought we'd never see him again." Maya's heart pounded. Could it be? She led them inside, quietly, motioning them toward the recovery room. And there he was, Rusty, Scout, lifting his head slowly, ears perked. His eyes scanned the room. Then he froze. A low, almost inaudible whine escaped his throat. The woman gasped and dropped to her knees. "Scout," she whispered. Rusty stood up slowly, stepping over his puppies. He tilted his head, then took one careful step forward, then another, then ran. He threw himself into the woman's arms, tail wagging like it hadn't in years, letting out a series of sharp barks and whines and licks. The man joined them, his face buried in the fur at Rusty's neck. There were no dry eyes in the room. Rusty remembered. He hadn't forgotten them, not even after all he'd been through. Not after surviving on the streets. Not after feeding his pups day and night. His family had come back. The couple stayed with him for hours, listening to the story, meeting the puppies. They cried when they heard how he dropped food into a sewer every day to keep his babies alive. They laughed through tears when one of the puppies climbed into the woman's handbag and refused to come out. When they asked if they could adopt Rusty again and his pups, Maya didn't hesitate. "They're your family," she said, voice trembling. "They've been waiting for you." Within a week, the paperwork was complete. Rusty, now Scout again, was loaded gently into the backseat of a car he clearly recognized. The puppies piled in beside him, yawning and curling into balls like they knew it was finally over. Before they drove away, Maya leaned down and kissed the top of Rusty's head. "You saved them," she whispered. "Now it's your turn to be saved." And as the car pulled away, disappearing into the horizon, a quiet warmth settled over everything. A stray no more. A father reunited. A family whole again. Rusty's story, no, Scout's story, traveled farther than anyone imagined. After his reunion with his long-lost family and the miraculous rescue of his 4 pups, the local news picked up Maya's footage. Within days, the story had gone national, and then global. Millions watched the grainy video of a limping stray dog dropping food into a sewer grate. Millions cried when they saw what came out of that darkness. Tiny, helpless eyes that had waited in silence for salvation. And millions more were moved by the idea that a dog, abandoned and alone, had refused to let his children starve, even when it meant going hungry himself. He had no voice, no way to write a letter, make a phone call, or ask for help. But what he did have was love. A quiet, relentless, unfailing kind of love. That kind of love doesn't need words. Scout's story inspired fundraisers for rescue groups. It inspired dozens of adoptions at Maya's clinic and shelters across the city. People started noticing strays they used to walk right past. Kids brought blankets to local shelters. One boy started making Rusty bags, little sacks filled with dog treats and water bottles, to keep in his mom's car in case they saw a stray. The world got just a little softer, a little more aware, because of one dog, one sewer grate, one daily act of love. And Maya, she never stopped thinking about that moment, the first time she saw him drop food through the bars. She often returned to that sewer, just to stand there and remember, not because she was sad, but because she needed to believe in something that pure, that brave, that loyal. Scout reminded her, and all of us, that family isn't about having the same blood. It's about sacrifice, about showing up again and again, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. And maybe, just maybe, we could all stand to be a little more like Rusty, a little more loyal, a little more patient, a little more willing to feed others before feeding ourselves. Because heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they limp down alleys. Sometimes they wait quietly behind bakeries. And sometimes they drop food into a dark sewer every day, never knowing if anyone's watching, simply because it's the right thing to do. If this story touched your heart, don't let it end here. There are still thousands of dogs, mothers, fathers, puppies, living in silence, waiting for someone to see them. Visit your local shelter. Foster if you can. Adopt if you're ready. Volunteer a few hours of your time, or simply keep a bottle of water and a handful of treats in your car. You never know who might need it. And if you ever see a stray dog doing something unusual, don't laugh. Don't walk away. Watch, because you might just be witnessing a miracle in progress. Like Scout, the dog who fed the sewer, the dog who saved his children, the dog who reminded us all what love really looks like.